Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the galaxy of intellectuals, invited guests, teachers, and my dear friends. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for today's guest lecture. I, Sugandha Chaudhary, Assistant Professor of Law, would like to extend my warm welcome to everyone present here. Now, without taking much of your time, let me introduce the lecture and the speaker of the session. The speaker of the session, this is the second guest lecture in the Orientation to Legal Education series. Today's topic is Vision for Reforms in Legal Education. Just a minute, I think my screen is paused. Is it visible now? Is the screen visible? Gopal?
Yes.
Today's guest lecture, the second guest lecture of the series, of the said series, will be delivered by our Honorable Justice J.R. Midha, sir. Let me introduce him. Justice J.R. Midha, Honorable retired Justice of Delhi High Court. He was appointed as an additional judge of Delhi High Court in April 2008 and permanent judge of that court in July 2011. Before elevation, Justice Midha had been practicing before the Delhi High Court, Supreme Court, and several other courts and forums, including the MRTP Commission, National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commissions, etc. He was the standing counsel civil of Government of Delhi before the High Court of Delhi from 2006 to March 2008. From 1989 to 1992, he was also teaching at Campus Law Center, Faculty of Law, Delhi University. He taught various subjects including Code of Civil Procedure, Indian Evidence Act, Transfer of Property Act, Delhi Rent Control Act, Limitation Act, Arbitration Act. The list is never ending. Motor Vehicles Act, Court Fees Act, and Suit Valuation Act, Indian Registration Act, Indian Stamp Act. The list is never ending. Justice Midha has written books on motor accident claims compensation and amendments to the CPC. So the list is never ending. I just had to lessen it up to brief the session, otherwise it would have gone on. To begin the lecture, now I request our Dean ma'am to please welcome the guest. Dean ma'am, Namita ma'am, if you can hear me, please.
Very good afternoon to one and all present here, my dear students, faculty colleagues, and our honorable guest speaker for the day, and Justice J.R. Midha, sir. We are very glad and fortunate to have sir with us today. As Sugandha has already pointed out and already detailed about that there are various areas and the subjects in which sir has specialized, and I would like to tell this to my students over here, my audience over here, that very rarely we come across people who have expertise in several fields. Like sir has been an advocate, sir has practiced as an advocate, as a standing counsel, then sir has been a high court judge, and also sir has been into academics. He has taught at Delhi University. So sir has we have so much to learn from sir as an academician, as a judge, as an advocate. Sir has so many insight, which I'm sure sir will be sharing with us today. And the vision which sir has for reforming the legal education is something on which we are looking forward as a faculty, and I'm sure my students shall be looking forward as a student to learn from sir, and I'm sure the entire wisdom will definitely percolate down to the students. And warm welcome, sir. And also would like to inform our students that sir has also joined us as an advisor and as well as a distinguished professor. So we are very fortunate to have you with us, sir. A very warm welcome to the session, and over to you, sir, now.
Good afternoon, everybody. MS Aradhana Galgotia, Director Operations, Galgotia University. Dr. Namita Malik, Dean, School of Law. Distinguished teachers of the Faculty of School of Law. The students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to address all of you and share the thoughts as to the reforms required in the legal education. You see, as the Dean has explained, I had the opportunity of wearing different hats. Firstly, as a law student, then as a law teacher, then as a lawyer, and then as a judge. But for the purpose of today's topic, the importance of the reforms I realized when I saw the performance of the lawyers in court, and then I realized that what should be done so that there is improvement in the legal education, so that we get very good lawyers and very good judges. You see, my experience as a judge of Delhi High Court is that not more than 50 to 20% of the lawyers have perfect art of advocacy. And whereas the remaining 80, although many of them, remaining 80 are also successful lawyers. But if we measure it from the scale of the advocacy skills, I find that there is need for improvement. So, while judging the cases and seeing the performance of the counsels, I realized that there is need for improvement in the legal education system so that we get good lawyers and good judges. Today, all the students are here, although I have shared my views in the faculty gatherings and at other platforms about the legal education. But today we have the opportunity of sharing the thoughts with the law students who are studying law at Belgottia University. First, let's understand the law as a career. You see, whether a person is a lawyer or a judge, the whole purpose of the legal profession is the resolution of a dispute. You see, a dispute arises or an offense is committed, and then we have to adjudicate and find a solution. Now, for finding the result, for finding the solution, for resolving the dispute, we have to find out what is the truth. And then we have to do justice. So justice we define as truth in action. And a layman, if you ask a layman what is justice, he will not understand. He will say whatever is the truth is justice. So meaning thereby, if a person has given a loan to the other person and he files a case and he succeeds, so he will say that yes, justice has happened or the truth has prevailed. On the other hand, if it doesn't get the relief, he will say that the truth has failed or justice has failed. So for a layman, the justice and truth are synonymous. They are the same words. Now question rises, how to find out the truth? For finding out the truth, we all know the art from our childhood, for which no training is required. We all know when anybody around us speaks a lie, and we are able to immediately find out what is the truth. So question rises, what is the difference between a lawyer and a layman? Because the layman also knows the art of finding out the truth. We all do. And also the art of judging. Whole day, everybody keeps on judging. People around us, we immediately judge them. Now, the difference between a layman and a lawyer or a judge is that the lawyer has got a rational thinking plus the knowledge of law. So he applies the law plus rational thinking, and then a lawyer makes an attempt or makes an endeavor to get justice for his client. Similarly, judge also, he applies rational thinking, applies the law, and then comes to a conclusion. So meaning thereby there are two fundamental things. One, the rational thinking. Number two, understanding of law, so that he applies the law. Now, how do we get rational thinking? Rational thinking is possible only after we understand the law in and out. And from that point of view, if you see from the point of our understanding, since the law is based on all real life problems, therefore, if we understand a law, we go backward and come to the position when there was no law. For every substantive law, there was if you go backward, you will find a position when there was no law. So first a problem arose, then the society decided some moral rules to decide that problem. Those moral principles which were used to resolve that problem, they ultimately resulted in practices, customs, and then they were codified as law. So therefore, if we understand each substantive law going backward from the day when there was no law but there was a problem, and then we see what was the problem, what was the practices, what is the law which is enacted, how far that law succeeded in resolving that problem, and then why that law was amended from time to time, and how far this law has succeeded in resolving that problem. If we see in this manner, then we understand the law. And once we understand the law in this manner, then our rational thinking also develops. Therefore, if we start reading the sections the way they are mentioned, then there will be difficulty in having a rational understanding. Therefore, my first view is that all the law students, as well as the law teachers, the teaching of law has to be in a manner in which we first clear the concepts of each law as to what was the need of that law, what was the object and reasons of that law, why that law has been enacted. To give a very fine example, so many laws are challenged as being unconstitutional, even after 50 years or more than that being on the statute. And the courts have held some of the laws to be unconstitutional. Meaning thereby that for 50 years, nobody thought rationally that this law is not constitutional. It is only somebody who today, after 50 years, applied his mind and said, no, this doesn't apply. This is not constitutional. This is ultra vires. Therefore, such things can happen only if we understand the law and have a rational thinking. Therefore, each student has to, whenever he studies any law, he has to examine that law from the time of its inception, even prior to the time of inception, and move upward. Once he understands the law, basics of law, then he should go to the second step of sections, and then he should go to the third step of case law, not before that. So this is my view on the understanding of law and rational thinking. Now, second most important aspect of building a strong understanding of law is law has got two parts. One is the procedural law, other is the substantive law. Procedural law, again, we can divide into two parts. One is pure procedural laws like CPC and CRPC, and the other would be Evidence Act. CP and CPC, which applies Code of Civil Procedure, applies to civil cases, whereas Code of Criminal Procedure applies to criminal cases. Both these law tells us what steps have to be followed in a legal case. For example, according to the Code of Civil Procedure, whenever a person has to file a civil case, he has to prepare a plaint and institute the plaint in a court of law, whereupon the summons are issued to the defendant, and the defendant on entering appearance has to file the written statement giving his defense, then a rejoinder by the plaintiff. Thereafter, both the parties have to file their documents, admission of denial of documents, then framing of issues. Then the plaintiff has to lead the evidence, followed by defendant who has to lead the evidence, and then final arguments. Now let's test this going backward when there was no code of civil procedure. In king's time, when the king used to do justice, there also if somebody would have gone to the king and said that he has a claim. So after he put forward his claim, the other side is called upon to ask, yes, tell us, what is your defense? When the other side gives the defense, then the plaintiff is asked, then the plaintiff is asked as to the rejoinder, and then after rejoinder, then the judge would ask for the documents, and each party will have to admittedly deny the documents. Then the court will determine what are the issues, what are the points on which the case has to proceed further. Those facts which have been admitted need not be proved. So, and after that, the plaintiff will be called upon, yes, show us what is the evidence with you, whether oral or documentary. Then the other side will be called upon to give the evidence. So same procedure which in old times a king who was not conversant and there was no written code was following is the same which we have followed here. So if this procedure is understood in a very nice chart form as to how we follow, and difference between criminal law will go back to criminal where the accused has got an immunity. Therefore, those portions of civil law will not be there, are different. Then the law of evidence will tell us what facts are relevant, who has the onus to prove those facts, how the evidence has to be led, and how the judicial belief has to be seen, what is the weightage of the evidence. And the substantive law will tell us what are the ingredients of the substantive law which need to be applied. Now, in the law curriculum, then we have over, I think, 6,000 substantive laws, whereas we'll be only going through the major substantive laws here. Therefore, so far as substantive law is concerned, the law student has to be taught and he has to understand what is the art of finding out the substantive law. When he becomes a lawyer, he may get a case which is beyond these 30 laws. So, but he should know the art of finding and interpreting and understanding the substantive law. Therefore, 30 substantive laws are the major substantive laws, 30 or 40, whatever are there in the law curriculum. Those substantive laws have to be understood, and they will be able to govern the major field, but they should also tell us what is the art of finding out the substantive law. But so far as the procedural law is concerned, the lawyer has to be a master of the procedural law from day one. Person who lacks the understanding of the procedural law cannot be a good lawyer. Therefore, there is a need of making the concept of the procedural law very clear, and procedural law is very simple. It is not at all complicated. So procedural law concepts should be clear to each law student, and it should be repeated in all these semesters in a concise form, so that by the time the law student completes the law degree, he is the master of the procedural laws. And the importance of the procedural law is that if there is a non-compliance of the procedural law, then even a very good case on merits will also be lost on that ground. Taking a very simple example, let's assume there's a law student who has just completed law, and his father tells him that, look, I have given a loan to a person who is not returning, so please file a case. So he will first examine whether there is a document or there is no document, whether it is a documentary case or it is based on oral loan. Then he will find out when the cause of action arose, when was the money given and money was to be returned, whether it is, what is the period of limitation, whether the case is within limitation. If it is within limitation, then you'll say which court he has to file. What is the value for the purpose of court fee and jurisdiction? Once it determines court fee and jurisdiction and also territorial jurisdiction, then he will draft a plaint in terms of the rules given in CPC in a concise form, giving each fact in one paragraph, no evidence produced, to be properly verified, supported by an affidavit. After he prepares the plaint, he will institute the plaint in a proper civil court. And at the stage of filing only, he will also examine what is the ultimate evidence which will have to be, by which he will prove. What are the possible defenses which can be raised? What is the answer to those defenses? So, coming back to the question, the law student has to understand the integration of the three laws. Although procedural law he should know by heart, substantive law, if it is covered by the major substantive laws taught here, he will examine that. Otherwise, he'll look into the substantive law. And then integration, without integration of all the three laws, he cannot proceed further. Therefore, the integration of the laws has to be understood from day one to the last day of the legal education. This is the most important aspect. So whenever we are going through the case laws, we should see how the case was filed, what was the defense raised, what was the evidence led, what was the finding of the first court, what was the ground raised in appeal, how the matter proceeded further. So these are, and now I come to the, yesterday we had a very fine discourse by Dr. Arun Mohan, who had very nicely analyzed the importance of legal subjects and non-legal subjects in the legal education. According to Dr. Arun Mohan, 65% of the education is non-legal education, meaning thereby the general personality of the person and the communication skill. I entirely agree with Dr. Arun Mohan. Communication skill is the most important aspect of advocacy. A lawyer has to first prepare a case, understand the case. Let's assume he has mastered the procedural law, he has mastered the substantive law, and he files the case in proper court of law. But at the time of hearing, if he is not able to communicate, then will there be a result? Answer is no. So therefore, he has to have an excellent communication skill. So question arises, what is a communication skill? Communication skill will include firstly, art of listening, then art of speaking, then art of thinking, then oratory, then fluency and speed at which he is speaking, then speaking with emotions, then keeping a smile on the face even if the court is hostile, and also the ability to read the mind of the judge or the opposite counsel, psychology. So there's a need to strengthen the communication skills as well. My experience in court shows that the counsels, that more than 50% of the counsels lack the art of listening, or speaking properly, they will interrupt in between, and there's a lot of shortcomings. So all these things have to be understood and learned by the law student if he wants to become a good lawyer. Without having these skills, it is very difficult to become a good lawyer. Even a judge will require all these skills if the person has to tomorrow enter the judiciary. So how these skills have to be developed, that needs to be considered. But at the same time, there's a duty of every student, law student, to make an effort on his own as well. And we all know this art. When we meet people in our walks of life, even in our family, even in our friendship circle, even in our neighborhood, even in our relations, we immediately judge a person. Only thing lacking is we are not able to judge ourselves. But when we meet another person and we talk to him, we immediately judge him. So many times you must be meeting people, and within 5 minutes you make up your mind that, look, this person is boring me. It is not worth spending time with him. You make out an excuse to leave the place. Who are very good communicators, very good humor. So you will make extra effort to spend more time with those people. We were once making a small experiment. We were at a evening reception party, and we said we'll just watch how the people communicate. And we found that if you do not communicate properly, and some person comes and meets you, within 5 minutes he will leave the place. He'll first, if you are not communicating properly, then the person will start the communication about the weather. Today weather is very good. And then he will ask you questions about your health and your dress. And then he will immediately come to the third point, say whether you have taken food. If you say you have not taken food, he says, you please go and take food. Meaning thereby you please get lost from here. And if you say that I have taken food, he will say, all right, I'll go and take food. To somehow leave from that place, just watch, go and see. So all of us know the art of judging another person, but we only do not know the art of watching ourselves. And if anybody comments on us, we don't like it, we start hitting that person doesn't know me. So therefore, whole art is how to judge ourselves. And the art of judging ourselves is, you see, with these two eyes, we can see outward, we can't see inward. But there's one more art by which one can also start seeing one own. On Friday, we will be having a lecture by a world-renowned jurist, Professor Mohan Gopal. I remember we were attending his lecture in National Judicial Academy, Bhopal, where he was giving a lecture to the High Court judges. And he shared the art of seeing own self. He said, when I'm giving a lecture, I am able to also see my own self. So one can also develop the art of seeing one's own self. But if that is lacking, one can always start a practice of recording. And secondly, you can also judge from the way how the society behaves with you. If people love talking to you, love communicating with you, enjoy communicating with you, it means you have got good communication skills. But you find people avoid you, if you're not able to maintain smile on your face, you can't speak with emotions, you don't have the patience to listen to the other side. Yesterday, Dr. Arun gave a very nice example. He said you should patiently listen, then do a rational thinking for 2 seconds and then respond. Just see in your life many times you interrupt in the half sentence and assume what he would say and then give the answer. So communication, and then advocacy also has to a large extent also the acting also. So therefore, art of listening, art of speaking, art of thinking, oratory, speed, emotions, reading the mind, keeping the smile, and also some acting. If all these are combined, then the performance, like you see in movies, excellent performance. No, many times people say that the performance which we see in movies, we don't see in courts, but in courts there are performers, but they are very few. There are very few performers, but those performers who are the top lawyers of our country today, the credit of their becoming top lawyers doesn't go to the law school or law college. They had on their own developed it. But that is a very few percentage. To my mind, this skill of communication skills should be developed in each and every child who wants to become a lawyer. Now, one more aspect in legal profession, which differentiates the legal profession from all other professions in the world, is that the performance of a lawyer is in public domain from day one. The other professions in which the performance is in public domain is film world, where also your performance comes in public domain on day one. And secondly, games, Olympic games or cricket match, a person on day one, if he plays, let's assume a person comes in the test match for the first time, doesn't have to wait for 10 years or 20 years. But this opportunity is not there in other professions. But here, if a young student who completes law and on day one he performs as the best lawyer of the country, then he comes in then he gets the, you can say, scoring, or he gets that success story on day one. Therefore, he doesn't have to wait for 20 years to show his performance. His performance is there. So there's a need to develop the communication skills in the legal profession so that on day one, a person's performance comes in public domain and he performs like a top lawyer. Another important aspect which differentiates the legal profession from all other professions is that in all other professions or occupations, you have to deliver to get money. Let's assume you start making cars. Now, you have to deliver the car to take money. If you are running airlines, you have to carry the passenger from one point to the destination to charge the fare. But now kindly see the work of a lawyer. He first communicates with the client. If the client is satisfied and he says, all right, you please file my case in court, then he communicates with the judge. But when the client says, what is the result? He says, no, sorry, result. If the judge understands the matter the way I am explaining, you will get the result. Otherwise, if there is adverse result, we'll go to the court. So meaning thereby, no delivery of any finished product, only talking. And how much money you make while talking? Today I was hearing in the morning, today I was hearing a very nice lecture. I think I may have saved somewhere. So there it said the legal profession is the highest paid profession in the world. So many of the councils, the fees of the council goes up to ₹1 crore per day. So it is even faster than the minting machine which will print the money. So if we have to just by communicating, and now one more difference which I'll explain, difference between an ordinary lawyer and senior lawyer. You see, a lawyer after numbers of practice, years of practice, and after gaining the expertise, then he is designated as a senior advocate by the High Court or by the Supreme Court. But after being designated as a senior advocate, he cannot now meet the client, sign the paper, prepare the case. Oral. Now see the difference. There is a lawyer who has got the case. He prepares the case. Now he engages a senior advocate so that the communication can be better. So senior advocate has got the art of communicating. And the difference between the briefing lawyer and the senior lawyer, the fees is more than 10 times, or it can be even higher. Therefore, the communication skill, even if a person has got very good understanding of law, he has mastered the procedural law, he has got rational thinking also, but if he has no communication skill, if he is not able to communicate, then everything is almost nullified. Therefore, each law student should develop the art of communication skills. And it is a multifarious task which has to be understood and then taken further. And one has to assess one's own self, because human nature is we don't invite criticism or telling of our shortcomings by anybody else. Even one doesn't like being pointed out even by the parents that, look, these are the shortcomings, please cure, because one is under impression that I am perfect. If one goes on with a belief that I am perfect, then can he be improved? Answer is no. So there has to be a self-realization that yes, there is a shortcoming. And I want to overcome. One can always choose a role model that, look, I have to reach this level. You can, out of the top 20 lawyers of the country, you can choose any one of the role model. You can pick up his speeches and arguments. For example, before that international court, that famous case which is still going on, the live hearing is available on the YouTube, where Mr. Harish Salve is arguing before the international court. So one can always pick up those things and try to speak like that and copy it and see yourself whether you have reached the level or we are not going into the methods, how to develop the communication. The importance of communication skills. So, to sum up the first session, again, we go backward. That number one, understanding of the law. Number two, rational thinking and art of finding out the substantive law whenever required. Let's assume you get a case of Boiler's Act, you will immediately open Boiler's Act. You should know the art of how to read and understand any substantive law. But so far as procedural law and Evidence Act, that had to be mastered from day one. Therefore, and lastly, the communication skills. So communication skill should be part of the development of a law student from day one to the last day. Similarly, procedural law should be part of the understanding from day 1 till 100. Whenever any substantive law is being gone into, one should immediately apply the two other, integrate the laws and see how it will apply. how it was, where was the case filed, which court had the jurisdiction, what objections were taken, what evidence was led, how many witnesses were examined. So we'll discuss, we'll have a short break. I think we have already, it's 45 minutes. We'll have a short break of 10 minutes. And in the meantime, you just do some introspection and assess yourself, all the students,
Sure, sir.
that what is your assessment about your own self. Instead of anybody telling you these are your shortcomings, you see your own shortcomings. Unless you do it, it will be very difficult to improve. And one should also know what is the art of seeing one's own self. There's a special technique, there's a special art of watching one's own self, which can be developed. When two persons are talking, one way is you see only the other person. Other art is you see yourself talking to that person. It is little difficult, but once one develops, then nothing can stop a person from improving to any extent, whatever possible. Thank you very much. We'll again join back in 10 minutes.
Welcome back, sir. Please.
So, I think first session, major things we have covered in the first session. One more aspect which requires innovation is the present moot court system. To my mind, the moot court system develops the oratory skills and law research techniques in the student, but still there's need to have mock trials in which the mock trials can be done in two ways. We can have real problems, and the student should prepare a plaint. Then it should be filed at the filing counter. One student should act as a filing counter. Matter is listed before the court. Then summons are issued. Then process server, process fee is filed. Then one student acts as a process server. Then he serves the summons on the defendant. One student should act as a defendant. Then the written statement is drafted. Then replication, rejoinder, evidence, cross witnesses, till the judgment. And the more in the method to call the real litigants from the legal service authority, or at times the litigants are there in women's cell where the matrimonial problems are there, and they can be brought to the university, and the student prepares the plaint or the case on the basis of the real facts, and then the complete process is continued from the filing of the case, written statement, replication, evidence, and judgment. And the student is able to see how the court's case started, how the case proceeded, how the pleadings were drafted, how the evidence was recorded, how the cross-examination was done, and how the judgment is passed. So my vision is that we should have mock trials with the real litigants, and in one day, whole day, the case should start from stage 1 till last stage, so that in one day the student is able to see how the case proceeds in court. So in one session, a civil case can be taken, in the other session, criminal case can be taken, then labor case, then some writ petition, then PIL. So like this, if in all these semesters, all types of cases are undertaken, it will give a very good overview to the law student as to how the case proceeds in the court of law. Then there is also need for strengthening the legal services. The students should be attached to the legal services authority, and they should provide the legal aid to the litigants, more particularly, for example, victims of the road accidents. A person dies in a road accident or suffers injury and is not aware of the law, so the law students can guide him and file that and help them submit that file that petition so that they get the compensation expeditiously. On this also a program can be prepared and the law students can gain in a very effective manner. Law students can do great service to the society. A system of coordination between law students and police department could be evolved, in which the intimation with complete details of the addresses of the victim can be provided to the law students and they can help them get justice expeditiously. Now we come to the next topic, ethics and morality. This is the most important topic, and the morality and ethics have to be infused in the law students in all the 5 years of the law course, not only as a one subject in semester. The subject on ethics and morality should include exhaustive curriculum followed by lectures from time to time. However, this subject gets least importance. In my view, this is one of the most important subjects. We expect the lawyers to maintain high standards of morality and ethics, but we forget that we provide insufficient training to them. As a result, the students after completing law do not have any inbuilt force to resist the prevailing system. There is need to organize regular lectures by sitting judges, former judges, leading lawyers, and the eminent personalities to encourage character building and high moral values in law students. Efforts are required to convert students into good human beings. A good human being would be good in all spheres of life. He will be a good lawyer, good judge, good husband, and good father. In addition, the law students should also be given exposure to cases pending before state bar councils and Bar Council of India arising out of the complaints against the lawyers, which will appraise them of the practical side of the duties and responsibilities and obligations of a lawyer. Now we come to the last, and to my mind, the most important topic of the day, which is education with value system. The law students have to be, the education has to be infused with the value system. And to imbibe the values, the student has to develop compassion, practice humility, become more patient, become better listener, not to interrupt others till they finish their sentence, learn to live in the present moment, quieten the mind, stop blaming others, think of your problems as potential teachers, surrender to the fact that life is not fair, choose your battles wisely, schedule the time for inner work, become an early riser, spend a moment every day thinking of someone to thank, make service an integral part of your life, live as if it were the last day. Now, since the lawyers have to master the oratory skills, there's very nice quotation on the words. Power of words have to be taught to the law students. There is very nice quotation. I will read from it. The power of words. Words have both explosive power of a nuclear bomb and the soothing effect of oil on troubled waters. They can start a war or they can usher peace. How others react towards us depends in a large measure upon the words which we speak to them. Life is a great whispering gallery that sends back echoes of the words we send out. So closely have words and ideas been correlated by custom and habit of thought that it is almost impossible for us to conceive of thinking without mental employment of words. This being the case, it becomes important that we choose the best possible words, not merely as a matter of expression, but also as a means of thinking intelligently. Soft words in a lullaby can put a baby to sleep. Excited words can stir a mob to violence. Eloquent words can send armies marching into face of death. Encouraging words can fan to flame the genius of a Rembrandt or a Lincoln. Powerful words can mold the public mind as a sculptor molds his clay. Words are a dynamic force. To my mind, this quotation should provoke the law students to think about the value of the words. Then one more aspect on which, to my mind, there's a need of guiding the law students is, at present, there is no guidance mechanism for law students for their career in law. As a result, after completing their law course, law graduates start their life without any concrete planning. Some lectures have to be delivered, should be delivered by eminent lawyers to guide the fresh law graduates on how to start the practice, where to start the practice, what are the options available to a law graduate and its pros and cons, how to handle initial work pressure, what are the techniques for drafting and law research, how to serve the society better, how much training is necessary, what paraphernalia is required for independent practice, how should they maintain the account of the fees. It has been noticed that young law graduates are at times exploited in the initial years of their practice. As a result, when they start independent practice, they also start exploiting the clients. It is also seen that the initial struggle at times becomes a habit, and even when they are well settled, they still continue struggling even at the cost of their health and family life. By the time they realize the realities of life, it is too late. There is need to understand that success is getting many of the things money can buy, but all the things money cannot buy. Success is getting many of the things money can, but all the things money cannot buy. So we should collect the things which money cannot buy. There is also need to understand the real wealth of a person, how much he would be worth if you take away all his money. There is also need to realize that we all have to live one life, and the life is worth only if it makes earth a better place to live. Life can be lived more fully and meaningfully by realizing that each new day of our lives is a miraculous gift of nature and is therefore special. Very nice quotation by French missionary Quaker. I expect to pass this way but once. Any good therefore I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now, defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Mr. H.M. Sirvai, a great lawyer and authority on constitutional law, once said, if it can be said that because I lived, the lights of few houses burnt a little brighter, then I feel would have been life lived, or as a citizen, is the art of living. So lost student also to the art of living. The two most important precious things in this world, one is body and the second is time. Human body is a marvelous creation and everything works with clock-like precision. One day something happens and the body becomes limp and comes to a standstill. We pronounce the man dead. If you dissect the body and figure what was there before and what has gone away, makes all the difference between life and death. We have no explanation, since everything is supposed to be inside the body, is inside it even after the death. We have no explanation for this phenomena. We have no explanation for the power which controls the events of this world. Our body is a precious gift to us. It is partially automatic and partially manual. Most of the essential features and functions are automatic. For example, working of the heart, lungs, kidney, liver, digestive system, blood circulation, manufacture of cells, blood, nails, etc. The remaining features and functions are manual, such as mind, hands, feet, eyes, mouth, ears, etc. In fact, it is a great design. If any of the automatic functions had been manual, there would have been many casualties every minute, as somebody would have forgotten to take a breath, other would have forgotten to beat the heart or to operate his kidney. Let's take an example to understand the body. If someone gives a precious Mercedes car with a driver to go around the earth on the condition that we have to remain inside the Mercedes car and we shall remain alive till the time the car is working, then the topmost priority would have been to take the best care of the car and driver by regular service, good fuel, driving on good road, maintaining good speed and so on. Our body is like a precious Mercedes car given by the God to us on the condition that we have to remain inside the body and shall remain alive till the time the body is alive. The driver is our heart. However, the maintenance of body and pure heart is not our top priority. We let our heart rule over the mind and drive the body. We know what is good diet for our body, but we let our tongue take over. We let our heart drive our body wild and do not take good care as we would have taken of the Mercedes car. The second most important thing in this world is time. The time is the costliest thing, though we consider money more important. The God has given 24 hours each day to each person. Rich as well as poor both have 24 hours in one day. No one can mortgage, sell or buy time. The nature's design is that we should sleep 8 hours at night to charge our body like mobile charging. And out of remaining 60 hours, we spend 8 hours for earning our livelihood. The remaining 8 hours should be available to us to pursue our goals in life and other activities such as service to the society, our spiritual upliftment, etc. However, we fix different priorities and spend more time in pursuing wrong goals. In my view, the richest person of the world is one who has managed his body and mind and has spent his time well. The students are like computers in which good software has to be loaded by the teachers and the institutions. If good software is loaded, the entire system will operate on that software and the students become good citizens of the country. We have gone beyond law, curriculum, but to my mind, there's need to make a good citizen and a good human being, and a good citizen and a good human being will be certainly a good lawyer. At the end, I will quote a letter written by Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America, which would serve as a benchmark of all moral teachings to the students. His remarkable literary artistry, his profound sense of importance of the government by and for the people, and the manner of his life and death have carved for him a niche in history. Here is a letter written by Abraham Lincoln to the headmaster of a school in which his son was studying. A letter so typical of a man who bore malice towards none and had charity for all. This letter will be teachers and their parents. Quote, he will have to learn, I know, but all men are not just, all men are not true, but teach him also that for every scoundrel there is a hero, that for every selfish politician there is a dedicated leader. Teach him that for every enemy there is a friend. It will take time, I know, but teach him, if you can, that $1 earned is of far more value than 5 found. Teach him to learn to lose and also enjoy winning. Steer him away from envy if you can. Teach him the secret of quiet laughter. Let him learn early that bullies are easiest to lick. Teach him, if you can, the wonder of books, but also give him quiet time to ponder over the eternal mystery of birds in the sky, bees in the sun, and flowers on green hillside. In school, teach him it is far more honorable to fail than to cheat. Teach him to have faith in his own ideas, even if everyone tells him you are wrong. Teach him how to be gentle with gentle people and tough with the tough. Try to give my son the strength not to follow the crowd when everyone is getting on the bandwagon. Teach him to listen to all men, but teach him also to filter all he hears on the screen of truth and take only the good that comes through. Teach him, if you can, how to laugh when he is sad. Teach him there is no shame in tears. Teach him to scoff at cynics and to beware of too much sweetness. Teach him to sell his barn and brain to the highest bidders, but never to put a price tag on his heart and soul. I'll repeat this. Teach him to sell his barn and brain to the highest bidders, but never to put a price tag on his heart and soul. Teach him to close his ears to a howling mob and to stand and fight if he thinks he is right. Teach him gently, but do not cuddle him, because only the test of fire makes fine steel. Let him have the courage to be impatient. Let him have the patience to be brave. Teach him always to have sublime faith in himself, because then he will always have this sublime faith in mankind. This is a big order, but see what you can do. He is such a fine little fellow, my son. I think this is a good, very nice, one of the finest, you can say, quotations by a father to the teacher. So it's today important for the teachers as well as for the students. So I think we have covered from law to communication to humanity, to art of life, to morality, to ethics. And this is my vision as to what should be the legal education. My vision is that the law graduate on completing the law should be a complete lawyer, and on day one he can argue like the topmost lawyers of the country with full confidence. Thank you very much for the patient listening, and good luck to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words, full of enthusiasm. Sir, I completely agree with you that self-assessment, self-confidence is very important for one individual to be a very good lawyer. Sir, your video is off, sir. We can't see you. Yes, sir, now we can see you. Sir, now, thank you for your warm words, sir. Thank you. They're full of knowledge, vast expertise, and great enthusiasm, sir. It was very good motivation for the entire students of the university. Thank you so much, sir. Now I welcome Dr. Partha Pratim, Professor of Law, School of Law. Please, sir, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Suvarna. Am I audible?
Yes,
Am
sir,
I
we can
audible,
hear.
Suvarna?
Yes, sir, clearly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to all. This is my pride and privilege to tender vote of thanks for today's second lecture of orientation to legal education series lecture organized by School of Law, Galgatia University. On behalf of School of Law, Galgatia University, I take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to Justice J.R. Mridha, advisor of law school and former judge of Delhi High Court, to present a memorable lecture on vision for reforms in legal education in this session for our students, faculty members, and other participants. His discussion on legal education was very much thought-provoking and practical oriented. He thinks every law student has to develop good communication skills, including the art of speaking, art of listening, and art of judging others also. Justice Mridha's lecture highlighted on 3 guidelines of our law students to develop: 1, basic foundation of law; 2, rational thinking; and 3rd, communication skill. His suggestion for mock trial with original problems of the real litigants will help the students to generate advocacy skill is very much innovative.
Mitra, sir, you're muted, sir. You muted. Yes, sir, now
Yes.
we can.
Sorry.
Now we
Justice
can.
Mridha's lecture focused on extensive study of procedural laws to get justice guaranteed under substantive laws. According to him, the integration of procedural law and substantive law should be understood from very first day of legal education. Felix Frankfurter, a professor of Harvard Law School and later became the judge of US Supreme Court, once told a judge should be compounded of faculties that are demanded for the historian and the philosopher and the prophet. I think, in true sense, Justice Mridha is a legal philosopher whose idea will be useful for our regular teaching, and his prophecy, no doubt, will bring new dimensions in our present legal education system. We are obliged to use that. Thank you. I convey my sincere thanks to our patrons, Chancellor, CEO, Vice Chancellor for disseminating their thoughts and constant encouragement to organize this lecture series. I extend my sincere gratitude to Program Chair and Dean of our Law School, Professor Namita Singh Malik, for her support to organize this lecture. I am thankful to Program Coordinators, Ms. Sugandha Chaudhary and Ms. Rupali Sekhawat for their tireless efforts. Last but not least, I am grateful to all participants for their active participation and patient hearing to make this program a successful one. Thank you. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, the time we have few minutes left, so actually because of the technical inconsistency, the students couldn't type. Now they are ready, sir. Can you open the Q&A session, sir? Surely, sir.
Yes, yes.
Students, please, you can directly ask your questions to sir. Switch on your cameras and please just unmute yourself. You can ask questions directly to sir.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I had a question. Regarding my question, sir said that in order to become a good advocate, one needs to have a better understanding of law and excellent communication skills that includes art of thinking rationally, art of speaking with emotions, oratory skills. So what I want to ask, sir, is about his views on artificial intelligence that is growing in today's era. And today we even have our very own first artificial robot lawyer, Ross, which has also been hired by a US firm. And there are presumptions that in near future, robots might take over this law profession as well. So can a robot really replace humans in this profession who are basically programmed by the humans and they don't have the art of speaking with emotions or excellent communication skills and other skills like we humans have?
You see, artificial intelligence will only help us to perform our work better, to refine our techniques. But ultimately, robots or artificial intelligence cannot replace the adjudication and the rational thinking and the other things which are required. Therefore, my view is the artificial intelligence cannot replace either the legal system or the judges. They will still be here. Therefore, they will only help us to perform the job better.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, sir.
Prabjot Singh wants to ask a question. Yes, sir. Prabjot, your mic is please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I have a question. Sir, my question is, sir, while presenting a case, what is more important? Knowledge of law or the ability to present your case better?
You see, both are equally important. Both are equally important. Nothing is less important. Let's assume you have full knowledge of law, but you are not able to communicate. It is all multiplied with 0. Or you have no understanding of law, you are not prepared well, and you have very good communication. So what will you communicate? Therefore, to my mind, equal importance is there. Understanding of law, rational thinking, mastery of procedural law, communication skill, all these have got equal importance. We can't put into a percentage form. They all are indispensable.
Thank you, sir, for the answer.
Right. Rightly said, sir. Very rightly said. Completely agree with you. Next question is from Victoria Gupta. Please unmute your mic, switch on your camera.
Sir, I have a question that I am thinking for judicial. So please guide me speed preparation ahead and on which side I have to focus the most
Voice is
parallel
not
with my
clear.
Victoria, your voice is not clear.
Please check your mic.
Yeah, please check your mic. Unmute yourself. Yeah. Now try repeating the question. Or can you just post it in the chat box? If your internet is not working properly, just post the question in the chat box.
Hello, am
Yes.
I audible, ma'am, now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Sir,
evening.
I have a question that I am preparing for judicial service. So can you please guide me as how I should proceed my preparation ahead and on which side I have to focus the most apart from my academic curriculum?
Your question is very good. I must compliment you for asking good question, but the answer would be very long. It will take one full session. It will.
Just a brief.
We will have one full session. The brief is that you have to understand the law. You have to understand. Kindly see, law has two parts. One is understanding, other is memorizing. So therefore, now let's assume we have to see what is the let's take Hindu marriage act. So what are the requirements of a marriage? What is a valid marriage? What is a void marriage? What is voidable marriage? What are the grounds for divorce? We can understand it. There's no need to remember it. It goes into the different part of the brain which understands. Then what is the section number? That has to be memorized. Name of the case has to be memorized. But if instead of understanding, we memorize the law, if we don't understand, but only memorize the basic law, then we will not have rational thinking. Can you understand? Rational thinking will come from what? From the understanding of law. Therefore, we should separate the two things. First, we should see which law we are studying. What was the position when there was no law? What problem arose in society? How the society, what moral solution society brought to this problem? What practices and customs started from there? What law was the first law which was framed? What was the fault and why that law was changed? Why new law was framed? So once we see this, then we understand in and out that, look, this is the law. Then we go to the second part now we read the section after this. So till we are understanding, we don't read the section, just understand it properly. To understanding the law, don't go into the section also. First, understand the law completely in and out. What is the law? It will go totally into your mind and brain, and it will be stored forever. Anytime there is a problem, you can just do rational thinking and answer. Then for examination purpose, you have to memorize the section, name of the case. But when you are practicing in the court as a lawyer or as a judge, now we also don't remember all the sections and all the names of the cases, but we can open the book, we know but we know the law. We understand the law. Therefore, for a judicial examination, you should understand all the laws very clearly. First, understand all the laws. Then go into the second step and memorize section and case law. If you understand it, then there will be rational thinking. If you don't understand it, you will never have a rational thinking. You will never become a good lawyer or a good judge. Right? So,
Okay,
in 2
thank you,
minutes,
sir.
this can be the only answer. For remaining answer, we'll
Thank you,
have
sir,
one
for
more
your
session.
priceless guidance.
We have one more session. University will keep one more session, how to prepare for judiciary, right?
Surely, sir. Surely we will. Thank you, Victoria. So the next question is from Anand Kashyap. Anand, please unmute your mic. Switch on your camera, please. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I want to ask that how a person can be a good advocate as well as morally good, because we have seen that word is manipulated as liar. So how a person can be a good advocate as well as morally good?
Sir, could you
See,
hear?
again, your question also.
Okay.
I have understood the question.
Yes.
Question is that how a person can be morally good advocate.
Yes, sir. Upheld a person.
So
how
this answer also will require.
person can
See, kindly see. This also will require a full session to discuss this. That is why I've said that morality and ethics should be taught from day one till last day, so that the morality infuses. But one broad answer which I can give you is that when the client comes to you and you find that he has actually committed the offense, right? Now question arises, would it be morally right to represent him? Now, you see here, so many times it has been discussed on various platforms. You see, lawyers, client doesn't know the law. And you see, client doesn't know the law. What wrong he has done, whether it is an offense, whether the complete procedure has been followed, whether now take a very simple example. A person has taken a loan, he is not returning, right? So plaintiff files a case that please give me a decree. You are representing the defendant. Your client tells you that, look, I have taken the loan, but I am not in a position to pay. So you see whatever is legally possible. Now you will certainly look into, now if the case is barred by limitation, is it morally wrong to raise that plea? You can go to the court and say that, look, sir, case is not maintainable. It is filed beyond period of limitation. Or, now let's see, the case is not filed in a correct jurisdiction. Cause of action rose in Bombay, parties reside in Bombay, case is filed in Delhi. You will say, sir, this court has no jurisdiction, please return the plaint. So therefore, difference between a lawyer and a layman is lawyer knows the law. Litigant doesn't know the law. So he comes to you that please present the case legally before the court. So if legally there are some grounds available to the person, then you can fairly represent him. But so far as facts are concerned, a lawyer who is morally upright will present the facts in such a manner that the truth is apparent to the court. He can't concede. Your client tells you that I have committed the offense. This is a privileged communication. You are stopped from disclosing this communication to anybody. So you can't go and make a statement that, look, he has told me, he has committed, therefore I'm telling you to please punish him. You can't do it, right? But you can certainly argue in a manner, because your duty is to assist the court in doing justice. There's a very nice quotation. Let me see if I can, this will answer your question. I will just, give me 1 minute, if I'm able to place it. My mind, this quotation, yes, I've got it. This is the quotation which answers your question perfectly. This is a statement or quotation by Mr. Ram Nath Goenka, who was the founder of Indian Express Group. It is not for lawyers. It is general quotation which I read in the Express newspaper long back. It says, be forthright, be frank, be fearless, whatever the odds. Never hesitate to take a stand if you believe in it. Never hesitate to speak out boldly against all wrongs. And now this is the last one which answers your question. And always ensure that you illuminate the truth behind the events. Always ensure that you illustrate the truth behind all the events. So your client has committed the crime, right? You can't tell the court that he has told me he has committed the crime, but you will argue in such a manner that you will illuminate the truth behind the events and the court will understand and you assist the court in doing justice. But this is a broad subject. It will require again a full length discussion. We'll have the discussion on that morality when we hold a session on morality and ethics. But for the time being, I think this should satisfy your question. Thank you.
So the next question is from, sir, do we have time for some more questions, sir? Should we
Yes.
continue?
One more, one or two.
Yes, sir. So the next question is by Vanshika Jaiswal. Yes.
Hello, sir. My name is Vanshika. Sir, basically, moving forward to my question, I just need to keep one thing in front of you. Like, as you said that the lawyers knows laws very well. Then also people call them a liar. Why? If we are protecting them, then people keep on calling us the liar. That you are a lawyer. That's why you called as a liar. After knowing everything, after knowing every laws.
You see, that reputation of this institution has gone down. No? The whole institution has gone down.
Yes,
Because you see, the other way of saying is that the justice is a casualty. Why can't we reach the truth? When whole world knows the truth and still we decide the other way around. Why is that? So this is again a big question, but to put it in simple words, you see, question is whether we are able to do absolute justice. Absolute justice is possible if the entire case is based on documentary evidence. Let's assume there is a contract between the parties and the entire communication is communicated by exchange of letters. There's no oral evidence required. So if we have to decide a case in which there's no oral evidence, only documentary evidence, then there can be absolute 100% justice. It cannot fail. Now take the other way around where there's no documentary evidence, only oral evidence. And you all know human beings lie, documents do not lie, human beings lie. And we don't have a divine eye. Only test is test of cross-examination. That test of cross-examination can be failed by a smart lawyer, in which case a truth will pass on as falsehood and falsehood will pass on as truth. So a very mature mind of the judiciary is required to go beyond it, but it can go wrong. So therefore, this overall perception in the public is because of the, as we discussed today, to need of all these, which we today discussed, the need for making a good lawyer. We are not producing perfect lawyers, no. I'm not saying about any one institution, but all over the country. We're not producing, no. If a lawyer doesn't have full understanding of the law, procedure, everything, then he will, instead of arguing, he will press for adjournments, no. So the cases will get delayed. So the litigant loses faith in the system. So therefore, overall perception is there. There are various reasons we'll have to discuss at length on some other occasion, right? But that perception needs to be improved. If we produce good lawyers, good judges, justice delivery system is expedited, cases are cleared expeditiously, the faith of public will increase. So we are today working on those lines only. How to make this legal education system a perfect system.
So my question is, how we can, being a lawyer, how we can master ourselves in all the legal fields at one time? Because whenever I ask to my seniors, they always tell me or guide me that you must do moot court, you must do everything. After doing everything, it's my personal experience that then also I'm not going to get a good internship in a big law firm.
Have you done everything which we have discussed today? What we have discussed today, have you perfected all this?
Yes, sir. I just hope so that I did my best.
Not hope. Say yes, then I'll give you the answer further. All what we have discussed
Yes,
today,
sir.
have you infused all this?
Sir,
All this?
apart from controlling my anger or listening to the client in front of me, I did everything.
Then if you have infused everything what we have today discussed, then you will certainly succeed. You don't have to worry. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, the last question, sir. The last one more if we could include, sir. So it's by Abhishek Kumar Singh. Abhishek, please, if you're still there, please just unmute your mic. Abhishek,
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So my question is, what type of quality interview you want to see in an applicant in judiciary interview?
All these qualities we discussed today, we will like to see all of them. His understanding, mastery over procedure, his communication skills. Communication skills are more important for a judge. He should know how to
Yes,
behave,
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And morality, ethics, everything, art of reaching the truth. All this we discussed today is not only for a lawyer. Today we are discussing legal education. So end product is either a lawyer or a judge. So all these qualities should be there.
Okay, sir. So I have one more question. And sir, how to understand bare language easily? Because the illustration and the bare language is so typical and so hard to understand that.
The language of the sections.
Yes, sir.
So that when now you'll find change in our teaching pattern. You will find what we have today discussed. You will find this all in the practical aspect. In your next teaching session, you will find a change.
Okay, sir.
Today, what
Thank
we
you,
are
sir.
discussing, we'll try to infuse everything into practice in the university. We'll discuss
Okay,
there.
Thank you, sir.
I think Abhishek's question was answered yesterday by Mr. Dr. Arun Mohan sir when he told us that every law student should keep an English dictionary before a legal dictionary, and that will totally help you to understand and interpret the legal.
So his question is, sections are complicated. How do we understand it?
How do we divide them in portions?
We are changing the teaching method, no?
Yes,
We
sir.
first go to understanding without opening the book and section.
Yes, sir.
So this question is different. We'll deal with it.
Surely, sir. We will. Surely, sir, we'll sit together and we'll figure it out. Surely. So, this is the end of the questions. I believe we're out of time as well. We're already beyond our limits. Sir, thank you so much for giving us this time, sir, and just enlightening the students. It's you can see the messages in the chat that it was a very interesting and an enlightening session, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the session.
God bless.
We shall meet. Thank you. Sir. Take care.